there, it's Jane. Thanks so much for stopping by. I have recently purchased some Slimline dies from Pink Fresh, and I made 4 cards, and I'm absolutely in love. They've been out of stock for a very long time. I finally got a few of the dies, and I'm waiting for a few more, so a few more card videos will be coming. Let me show you how I made them. They're very, very easy. So these are the 4 products that I received from Pink Fresh. The Slim Ornate Banner. The cards measure 8 5/8 by 3 5/8. The diagonal stripes, the Slim Lacy Edgers, and the Slim Edgers. I did not get a chance to use those 2. We're going to use the diagonal stripe and the Slim Ornate Banners today in the cards. Let me show you the first card that I made as my prototype. Just make sure I knew what I was doing. And I love the way it's layered. I love the long card, and bonus, you don't need additional postage. They fit in a regular size envelope. So let me show you how I made them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my cardstock 7 1/4 by 8 5/8. Now this trimmer, the quarter mark is kind of odd. You can see I'm struggling to find the quarter. I always start at the bottom and push my blade up. That way my paper does not move. I do love this Viscars trimmer. 8 5/8. And then I'm going to score the 7 1/4 side to 3 5/8. And I'm only going to score down half because I never cut my paper exactly. And then I'm going to take my bone folder and start on the left, which is the scored side. You can see I'm struggling here. And then I'm going to run it, and that will just automatically crease that right side. That is how I find it's the best. Otherwise, I'm scoring and my lines don't line up. There's 3 layers to this particular banner, and they do fit on your platforms for your Gemini Junior or your Big Shot or your Spellbinders. And I'm going to be using these Lavender Fields cardstock and Wild Wisteria. And then this is a pattern paper I got from Lawn Fawn, and it's called, from the Really Rainbow collection. It's a 12 by 12 paper because I like decorating the envelopes. So I've taken the largest banner here, and I'm putting it on top of the lavender cardstock, and I'm going to run that through my machine. As you can see, it just fits. You just got to make sure you line it up correctly. I love the Gemini Junior, and this is how it comes out. That's the first layer. Then I'm taking the darker purple cardstock, and I'm going to be cutting the second layer, and then I cut the third layer out of white. Now I want to add the little details on the top and the bottom of that white layer. So I've cut just a little piece of the pattern paper, and I'm cutting some strips. So I'm trying to make sure that I get some purple in the strips, because there's no sense in getting a matching paper if you don't put the matching color in the card. So I'm just cutting one about 1 inch, one about 1 1/4 inches. I didn't measure them. I'm lining up the banner on top of those, the top and the bottom. I'm going to run them through my die cut machine, and that way they will match up, and I can lay them on top of the white, and the little dots will match up and look great when we glue it all together. That's how that'll all go together. So now that I have my layers cut, let me work on making my flowers. So this, my favorite thing stamped, freshly picked, I just adore. So I've just gone through and cut it out. Well, let me just show you this. It's a metallic bowl. And if you can ever find a die in your mess on your desk, grab your metallic bowl and run it all across your desk. It will definitely pick it up, as you can see. So I went through and I cut a whole bunch of colors. I cut the leaves out of green. I cut some pink, some purple, some blue, and I really wasn't sure where I was going to go with this, but I do know I wanted to add some shading. So I used my Copic markers, and I just added a little bit of shading on the bottom of the tulips. I colored some of the leaves a different color. It just adds a little more depth and dimension. And I did not add any Wink of Stella or anything sparkly to the card, and I'm thinking now that I'm watching myself make my card that maybe I should have added some sparkles. So go ahead and add a little bit of sparkle on your card too. I think it would be fun. So I am just coloring, there's this little circle that I'm coloring now, layers on top of the other blue circle, and I wanted to give it a little more depth. I'm picking everything up with my Crystal Catania. I like to go through and add some glue, you know, 2 or 3 areas so I'm not constantly putting the lid on my glue. And I'm lining it all up. You can see it doesn't even show on the other side. Picking everything up with my Crystal Catania. I use my Little Things Pearls Soft Lilac. I love these pearls. There's so many different colors. And I put that in the center of the purple flower. And then I colored some of the leaves a darker color. And I'm laying them on top. And now I'm gluing my flower box, I guess, into my watering can. And I just think this is absolutely amazing and love this. And I can see this, a whole bunch of these on the bottom of a long card with some kind of really cool sentiment. So I have these little bowls. I keep them on my desk. I will link everything for you in the blog post. So please go to positivelyjane.net. Now, when I cut this largest layer, it comes out wavy. It came out wavy on both cards. So the first card I used liquid glue and I did not like how that worked. So now I'm using tape runner and putting it on the edges, and that worked really, really well. This card adhered very well and it is not wavy at all. So that's the first layer. Then I'm putting a little bit of foam on the second layer. This is not rocket science. I just eyeball it, give it some cuts, line it all up, give it a little curl. And then I glue it down with liquid adhesive. I find that works the best on foam. And yes. So I'm going to be layering this onto the first layer. Again, using some liquid adhesive. Going around all the edges. Lining it up in the middle of where I am. The beauty about liquid is that you can move it around a little bit. I do like to use acrylic blocks and hold everything down while I'm working on my next section. So that's just going to hold it down, let it sit there. I'm going to use some tape runner on these because the liquid glue on these just did not work well. And I'm using some score tape on the foam for this because I did not want it to buckle. So that's kind of what it's going to look like. So now we're going to make our sentiments. So I have some black cardstock here with my embossing powder. Buddy, it's getting a little low. That's why I'm pouncing it. Lawn Fawn has graciously sent me a bunch of stamps every once in a while when I order something. So this thanks stamp came from Lawn Fawn for free. So just keep on ordering and maybe you'll get a free thanks stamp as well. This is Brutus Monroe embossing ink. It's a clear sticky ink so that the embossing powder will stick to it. I'm going to lay this down and then I'm going to grab my sentiment, which is from Simon Says Stamp, Big Thanks Words. And I love this particular stamp set. I like to put my stamp on my work surface first, line it up, and then pick it up with a clear block. I'm using the Brutus Monroe Alabaster embossing powder into my coffee filter. And then I'm going to take a dry paintbrush and I'm going to wipe off the excess so that I don't have a bunch of white dots everywhere. I like to heat my heat gun up hot and then I embossed it. And I'm using my Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer to line it up. It's my favorite trimmer for lining up skinny sentiments. You can really get an idea of where you're at. Now it's hard to cut the other side, so what I'm going to do is I got this genius idea from Jennifer McGuire. I'm going to make a handle. And I'm going to take my handle and I'm going to put it on my sentiment and I'm going to use that to hold and I'm going to put that and cut it, give it a little pound, and there you go. Perfect sentiment strip. I'm using these Lawn Fawn banners. Are they Lawn Fawn? Yes, Lawn Fawn everyday banners to cut out the thanks. And I'm going to put some foam behind the whole flower pot. Make it pop on the card. Lining out where my thanks is. Trying to get the word thanks in the middle. So the right little space there. So I'm taking it's my pointy tool. I couldn't find a pencil. Whatever I can find, I make a mark. Cut it with my Tim Holtz trimmer so I make sure it's nice and straight because I get to all this, I get this far and then when I cut the edges, they're never straight. So I use my trimmer to always do straight. And I'm going to be putting that down with some adhesive and there you go. First card finished. Now I'm going to link to these envelopes for you. These are Slimline envelopes. They're an 80 pound, and I wanted to decorate my envelope. So when I put paper on the flap of my envelope, I use a tape runner and make sure it's on the edges, completely as much on the edges as I can. So I kind of overlap onto my glass work surface, which is the glass media mat, which I absolutely adore. This is that Lawn Fawn Really Rainbow paper. That's why I needed 12 by 12 so I could get it on this big envelope. I'm laying it on the crease, and I'm just going to take scissors and turn the envelope over and take scissors and just cut along edges. And then you have a matching envelope to go with your card. And I just think it came out fabulous. Here's the card that I showed you earlier. This is a little brighter with the yellow and the blue. It just goes to show you can change colors and you get a completely different card. So now we're going to use this diagonal stripe one. And I'm kind of showing you that there's some score lines, there's some skinny cuts, there's some fat cuts. It's a really interesting banner, and I really, really like it. So I went through my stash, and I had these Hero Arts blossoms from another project. And as you can see, they're called cherry blossoms, and they were already made. So I cut them out of different color cardstock. I highlighted them with Copics with brown. I put little pink centers. I colored the leaves, as you can see, kind of layered them up, glued them all up. And I had 5 of these sitting on my desk looking for a home. So I thought, well, okay, let me use this in this diagonal banner because it will fit right into the slot. So let me show you what I did. So I take this diagonal banner, and when you run a really small bead of glue on the edges, and when you get going, if you just keep your hand moving, it will be a small bead. I always start gluing on the bottom fold, and I get the fold lined up first, and then I'm gluing the edges. And the reason I do that, I'll show you that in just a second, because sometimes I don't always cut my cardstock even, but the die I know is straight. And you can see here that the top right-hand corner is not even. So now I can cut that off because it's just the top of the card, and I use my trimmer to do this. I'm using this Double the Smiles die, which I love, and I think it's been discontinued. And I'm sorry about that, but you can get any word die. And this is how I keep track of all my cardstock, and I will link to a blog post and video below on how I do this. I'm looking for a color, and it happened to be Lawn Fawn Ballet Slippers. This is how I keep track of all my distress blending foams. I have a 3-inch notebook and 2-inch coin pockets and some little Velcro circles, and I made the swatches, and I'll link to all those too. I have free swatches for you to download. And I glue the Velcro on it, and that's how I keep my blending foam so I'm not mixing them all up with everything else, and it works really, really, really well for me. So I'm just going to grab the worn lipstick, and I wanted to put some Distress Oxide on this piece of pink cardstock to kind of match what's on the cherry blossoms. I just wanted a little bit of highlighting in there. So I'm using my mini ink blending tool. This is nothing fancy. I'm just running it over the edges because I am just cutting out a word. It's not going to really matter. And look how cute it looked. So then I'm taking the My Favorite Things Rainbow Greetings for my sentiment, and I stamp that with black ink, and now I'm laying out my cherry blossoms to kind of see where I want them to go. So the first thing I did was lay down my You Brighten My Day, and then I glued down my smile. That is actually 3 layers of pink cardstock. And now I'm putting on the tittle. The tittle is the little dot on top of the eye. I learned that from Laura Fedora. Amazing what you can learn on card making videos. So I lined up my cherry blossoms, everything's gluing, and now I'm waiting it for all to dry. So this is the second card, and I kind of had an idea in mind. So I cut my cardstock, and then I decided to cut it down a little bit smaller because there's no sense in blending an area of a piece of cardstock that's a little bit too big, because then it won't give me the results that I'm looking for. So I'm cutting it really close, and I'm taking the pumice Distress Oxide. I'm going direct to paper. I wanted a lot of ink on this because I was looking for like a metallic look. And I could have started, well, little trick. If you put a piece of tape on your fingers, when you're touching the card, you won't get fingerprints. Anyhow, I could have started with gray, but I wanted the oxide all over it because I wanted to spritz it with some water when I was all finished. So now I'm taking the next color and I'm just putting it around the edges, and this is hickory smoke. And then I'm just following with black soot. I'm just going to go back and forth between the three colors and blend it all in. It's really easy to blend oxides. And so now I'm taking my distress sprayer, putting it in my hand first. And the distress sprayer is great because you get big dots and little dots, drops, I should say, not dots. Taking my microfiber cloth and drying it, giving it all a dry just a little bit because there's a lot of ink on there and a lot of water. And then I'll set it aside to dry. Tim Holtz Ideology has these great distressed looking metallics. There's 2 packs, metallic and metallic 2. So I chose a gold out of the metallic one, and I cut it out with the Simon Says stamp cottage stems. And I think this is discontinued too, but you can find any stem die. I cut 3 of those, and then I cut my cardstock, the one I just did with the Distress Oxide ink, out with the diagonal stripe, and I think it came out amazing. So now I'm kind of tucking it in, trying to see where I want everything to go. I grabbed this Neat and Tangled Awesome die, and I started out with the gray, and I ended up doing black because I thought the gray was too washed out, and I'm sorry I speeded through that. I apologize. This is the Tim Holtz Ideology Big Chat. It is pre-printed sentiments, and they're sticky on the back. And I just thought I would grab one of those and use it, and I think it came out just amazing. This is pattern paper from my stash. It actually came from Stampin' Up! Probably 7 years ago, and that's what I used to decorate my envelope. And it has the word awesome in it, which I just thought was so awesome. And there you go. Don't you just love these Slimline cards? So here's the 2 Slimline cards side by side. Again, I'll link all the supplies on my blog post, so go over there, check it all out. And here's the 2 thanks bouquets side by side as well with the decorated envelopes. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been really, really fun. I wanted to show you that they fit in the card perfectly, and again, you do not need extra postage. So that is a bonus in my mind. So I hope you have a great week. Give them a try and have a fun making them. Thanks so much.